Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, Senator Jeff Flake joins us in studio to discuss, among other things, the Iran nuclear deal and moves to improve America's relationship with Cuba. U.S. Senator Jeff Flake next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Consumer confidence in Arizona is at its highest level since the recession began 8 years ago. The state still lags national consumer confidence numbers, but economists say that Arizona's improvement reflects optimism over the job market and less negativity over business conditions. The report notes that the state's good feelings are highly concentrated in Maricopa County, with Pima County and the rest of the state less optimistic. And new home building permits in the Metro Phoenix area increased 55% last month. That's according to the Phoenix Housing Market Letter, which reports that the valley is now 39% ahead of last year's home building pace. The median price for a new home in the valley is up to $300,000. That's $83,000 more than for existing homes. Arizona Senator Jeff Flake announced this weekend that he will oppose the Iran nuclear deal. Senator Flake made the announcement after returning from Cuba, where the U.S. flag was raised above the American embassy for the first time in 54 years. Here now to discuss those and other issues is U.S. Senator Jeff Flake. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
It's nice to be here.
Let's get going here. This Iran nuclear deal, you come out this weekend, you say you're opposed, one of the last holdouts here on the Republican side. Why are you opposed?
Well, I think the nuclear side of it is pretty good, frankly, and I had hoped to be able to support a good deal. I've supported the negotiations all along, but what concerned me most about it was on the non-nuclear side. I felt that the agreement tied our hands in Congress and makes it very difficult for us to respond to any nefarious behavior that Iran might inflict on the region. And we've seen a lot of that in the past, and I didn't think that it was right to tie our hands that way.
So the idea of including inspections and the restrictions and that sort of thing, you were on board?
Yes, particularly with Iran's known nuclear sites. The inspection regime was pretty tight. When it came to the suspected sites, a little looser. But on the whole, although there were deficiencies, on the nuclear side, I thought that the agreement on the whole was probably worthy of support. But when the president and the administration said, we're just going to separate, this is a nuclear deal and we'll deal with the other activity, later or separately, it's tough to do that, particularly because I think that what this deal will do is make it very difficult for us to challenge Iran's behavior in the region. Because if we do, then they will simply say that we're out of our obligations on the nuclear side. And so the leverage really moves to Iran in that regard.
And yet without a deal, and it sounds like other allies are going to go ahead and lift sanctions on their own, which would leave us with the only one out there, would that not be worse? If they're up to nefarious activities with this nuclear deal, they certainly be up to it without it, wouldn't they?
Well, for those of my colleagues who say, we can just easily go back to the negotiating table, it's not going to be that easy. There were no good outcomes here. I think that it's going to be tough to get back there because all of our allies, as you mentioned, want to go forward with this deal. But I think that we obviously hold the strongest hand here still, particularly with financial sanctions on Iran, to make it difficult for them to move money around the world. We're still the world's reserve currency. That means something. Iran wants to be part of that. And so I think on the nuclear side, frankly, Iran doesn't have as much incentive to cheat big there. They'll probably cheat small, but not much incentive there. But what I worry about is their activity in the region and how that plays in the overall agreement. And I think we've got to make it tighter in order to make it a good agreement and to make it durable as well.
So if let's say that the deal were approved and everything goes through and Iran is found to be just funneling money into Hamas and funneling money into Yemen and other areas of influence, and the U.S. doesn't want this, doesn't like this, this agreement says we cannot impose sanctions separate and apart from nuclear on these activities. Is that what you're saying?
The administration will say, yes, we still have all the tools. We don't get rid of any tools that Congress has to impose sanctions on Iran if they conduct activities outside of the nuclear sphere. But that's not what the agreement says. The agreement says in pretty plain text, and Iran has already stipulated that that is their understanding of the agreement, that if we impose similar or the same sanctions that we have on Iran, they will consider that a breach of the agreement, and that relieves them of their obligations on the nuclear side. And that's where I think we move the leverage from us now to Iran, because we'll be very reluctant to challenge Iran on those items. And to tell you how reluctant we will be, right now we have sanctions called the Iran Sanctions Act. And those sanctions expire next year, and they'll no longer be in effect. If Iran misbehaves on the nuclear side, there are so-called snapback sanctions, or the opportunity to snap back. But if this Iran Sanctions Act expires next year, there will be fewer sanctions to snap back to. And so Congress has said, well, why don't we reauthorize those sanctions now? They'll still be waived, but should Iran misbehave, we'll have sanctions to snap back to. And the administration is saying, no, don't do that, because Iran will consider that a violation of the agreement. And if we're reluctant to challenge Iran's interpretation of the agreement now, how more reluctant will we be when the agreement is in place to challenge their behavior in the region?
And so critics will say that's an interesting argument, and they will nod their heads, right, and they will say, yes, that leaves military activity as the only option.
I don't believe that. I think Iran has every incentive, like I said, to behave on the nuclear side. Iran has been a threshold nuclear power for a while. They've been within months or a year away from having enough fissile material to build a bomb or two for years. And they've not taken that last step because they've feared the reaction of the U.S. Or its allies. And so I think that for those who are saying the only option is war, I think that's overstated.
How much pressure did you get from the Republican Party, especially the right side, the conservative side of the party? Because we saw some ads, we heard that there was pressure on you, and again, people will hear this and they'll say, he's just another Republican, not going to give Obama any success.
You know, I started out, like I said, in support of this agreement. Very few of my colleagues were. And I said from the beginning I would like to support a good agreement. I don't think it's a comfortable position for us to be in on the other side from virtually all of our allies, except Israel. It's not a good position to be in. And I hate the fact that we'll have an agreement which will likely still go into effect with just a bare plurality of partisan votes. That's not good for our foreign policy. I would have liked to have been there, but I just couldn't get over this institutional problem that we have. Now, had this been a treaty, and I think that this should have been a treaty, then you could bind future Congresses and future administrations because it's a treaty. But the administration didn't want to go that route. If it had been a treaty and these issues that I'm talking about, they could have been clarified. With a treaty, we pass something called RUDs, or Reservations, Understandings, and Declarations, where we say, here's our understanding of the agreement. Had we had a treaty, we could have done that and clarified this sanctions issue, like I said. But the administration didn't want to go that direction. So I said to the administration, well, if we can't pass RUDs, at least come to the Congress, work with us on some parallel legislation that could be passed to clarify some of these issues. I wrote to the president as early as February saying, how are we going to do this to make sure this is binding on future administrations? I went to Susan Rice weeks ago when the agreement was announced. I've talked to other members of the administration, and the last attempt was on the flight to Cuba when I spoke to Secretary Kerry, trying to bring them around to work with the Congress now to clarify some of this, but I haven't been successful there.
Last point on this, you mentioned working with the Congress numerous times, and yet Democrats will say every time the president tries to work with Congress, it's a brick wall. First of all, is that a valid criticism? And second, can you understand the administration saying, we got to do whatever we can, because if it's not a brick wall, it's going to be some sort of speed bump that never gets us to where we need to go?
It's tough to pass a treaty, but it's done. START 2 was the last one, I think, 2010. It's tough, but it should be tough. And I think if the Congress or the administration will work with Congress, so instead of simply saying, we're just going to go it alone completely. And I said to Secretary Kerry in a recent hearing, he said that his concern is you can't have 535 secretaries of state, and that is true. And all of us in Congress will act like that if we are given the chance. But there are many points in between that and completely ignoring Congress until you have to. And you can deal with committees of jurisdiction. We have the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. There are a lot of individuals who are willing to work with the president there. Myself and another Democrat have been sponsoring authorization for use of force, or AUMF language, for a while. The Senate Republicans gave the president enough votes to go into Syria and to strike there. We can and have and will work with the president if he'll work with us.
Are there enough Senate votes to override a veto?
I doubt it. I think as it stands, I've thought for the last few weeks that the president probably has the votes to sustain a veto.
You mentioned Cuba. You just returned from Cuba from this embassy open. First of all, describe the scene there. What was it like?
You know, what was really interesting is that when we found out we were going to be doing this around this time, the administration had let me know a few months ago that there were 3 Marines who had been in Cuba in 1961, who had actually physically lowered the flag in 1961, and had since that time wanted to go back and raise the flag back up.
Wow. And
so they were on our flight, and they came there. They're near 80 years old, all 3 of them, and they were there to hand off the flag to be raised up again. And it was just an incredible experience. It really was.
Yeah, I'm assuming oppressive heat. It's Cuba in the summertime. But other than that, was there excitement? Was there trepidation? Were there protests? What was it like?
Oh, there was a huge crowd outside of the embassy just there to watch this historic moment. And there were people that have been working on this issue. If I think I've been working on it a long time, 15 years, many of these people have been working on this for 54 years. And it was just really emotional to see them just finally achieving what they set out to do. And this isn't going to end problems that we have with the Cuban government. They still have human rights abuses that need to be addressed. They aren't anywhere close to having a democratic government. This is still a communist dictatorship. Mm-hmm. But we have a much better chance of pressing those issues when we have diplomatic relations and when Americans are free to travel back and forth.
You mentioned how long you've been working on this. Why has this been such a focus of concentration for you?
I've always just thought, as a Republican, we preach the gospel of contact, commerce, engagement, travel, and yet we've said with Cuba, no, it's not going to work. It just seemed like a big glaring inconsistency in our foreign policy. And plus, I took a poll of Cuban Americans in Arizona, and both of them said, move right ahead, we like what you're doing. No, but along that vein, I always thought that this policy is too much controlled by only those with parochial interest in it. And they should have an interest. Some of them have a very keen interest, as they should. But when you're telling all Americans that they can't travel to Cuba, then you probably ought to have a broader coalition supporting that policy, and we never did.
Representative Matt Salmon from here in Arizona calls it moral cowardice to first not insist on liberty for the Cuban people before these types of actions. He says he's comparing this to opening talks with North Korea. Is he wrong?
Now, I think a more appropriate comparison would be with China. We did in the 70s. Certainly China did and still has human rights problems and issues that we ought to deal with. But I think we recognize that we're better able to press those issues with diplomatic representation there. And another would be with Vietnam. We fought a pretty difficult war there, and with feelings pretty raw. And still, for the past 20 years, as Secretary Kerry mentioned while we were there, with Vietnam, 20 years ago, we'd established diplomatic relations and said, let's not be prisoners of the past on this. Yet with Cuba, it's persisted until now. I just think we have a much better chance to engage them on those issues in a meaningful way with diplomatic representation.
And yet those, again, the critics of this move, they say it sends the wrong signals to Russia, sends the wrong signals to China. If we don't take this opportunity, if we have the opportunity to open up an embassy, we have the opportunity then to really demand serious change as far as liberty is concerned.
Let's talk about what we're demanding here. With regard to Cuba, the meaningful sanctions are not on Cubans, they're on Americans. To tell Americans, here's where you can travel and here's where you can't, that's just wrong. I mean, if somebody's going to limit my travel, it should be a communist. And, that's their province, but my government is too good for that. Unless there's a compelling national security reason otherwise, Americans should be free to travel wherever they want. And plus, if you want to punish the Castro brothers, make them deal with spring break once or twice, that would be fitting.
You talk about moral cowardice. All right, let's keep it moving here. I know that this business with the Salt River horses has been delayed removing. Why is the Forest Service now pushing for this?
I think that we've seen some pressure from some environmental groups that these horses are detrimental to the environment there, and maybe they're responding to that. It seemed rather strange to all of a sudden say we're going to round them up, and I think, frankly, in this case, hold your horses here. Just listen to those that that find great enjoyment in seeing this kind of iconic picture of the West. And I think we can deal with the issues to the extent there are issues with the environment and still allow it to happen. We
just had heard the Audubon Society coming out there saying that these horses are destroying natural habitat. The Forest Service says these are feral strays. It's livestock. It's not really wild animals out there. And now the Audubon Society is saying that these young cottonwood trees and these willow trees in the riparian areas, these horses are just eating that stuff up, and it's not good.
Like I say, I think that to the extent that there are environmental issues, we can deal with them as we do in other areas where we have grazing or other activities that go on. And so I think that we ought to keep them where they are.
Well, so are you congressional action possible on this issue?
Well, I don't think we need that. Forest Service has already come and said we're going to hold off. And so they're going to study the issue more, and we all know that when government decides to study an issue, they take a while.
Also on the wildlife front, Cecil the lion, he was the lion. He was a well-known lion and obviously killed by a hunter. Your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I don't know what kind of hunter gets his jollies shooting a lion with a collar on it, but be that as it may, when you talk to these countries, particularly in southern Africa, that have some healthy wildlife herds and can more effectively manage and preserve by using hunting as we do here in this country. I don't think the answer is as simple as just banning hunting. I don't think that we should. Having said that, I mean, we ought to look into this situation. I think the Zimbabwean authorities are to make sure that the proper permits were there. It looks like that wasn't the case. And so this case aside, the broader question is how do we make sure that wildlife remains in Africa. And I can tell you the bigger problem is not with the lions. Lions aren't endangered. It's with elephant and rhino, and that's a huge problem. South Africa lost about 1,200 rhino in Kruger Park alone, one park. 1,200 last year. They've lost more than 700 this year, and you can't sustain that kind of rate of loss. And elephants, so we've lost between 40 and 60% of African elephants just in the last couple of decades, and we can't sustain that either. So we've got to step up efforts to ensure that we dampen demand. Most of that is in Asia for ivory and rhino horn, but also look at these trafficking networks as well. And we can help and are helping in that regard.
I was going to say, what can the U.S. do to fight this ivory trafficking?
Well, we are working with those governments to try to, these are sophisticated international syndicates in many ways, moving rhino horn and ivory. And so we can clamp down there, stiffen penalties where that makes sense, but also help these countries like Kenya and others who have had this problem for a long time with helping them with increased number of park rangers and others to protect these herds. And so we're looking at a number of different options, all of which are going to have to be employed in other areas, and what works in one country may not in another. And so we're working with them.
You visited Africa with President Obama?
Did.
Talk to us about that.
It was great. I chair the Africa subcommittee of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I've spent about 3 years of my life in Southern Africa, and so I have a great love for the continent. And so it was nice to go back with the president and to go to Kenya. Quite emotional for him, the first American president to be there, and then on to Ethiopia. I had not traveled to Ethiopia before, but incredible country there as well. And there we talked about a lot of development issues and security issues with Al-Shabaab in Kenya and the attacks that have gone on. We have important security relationships with these governments, also anti-poaching efforts, as I mentioned before, and climate issues and many other things as well.
Real quickly, I know that you've been looking at and commenting on these paid military tributes at sporting events, which we all think are just one great big grand gesture by these professional teams, and it turns out these are basically paid advertisements, aren't they?
Some of them. In fact, few of them. Gratefully, the Arizona teams, the Diamondbacks and others, do it as you would expect, the goodness of their hearts. And my problem was we found some contracts where some pro sports teams, football teams, were paying or being paid to put members of the military up on the Jumbotron, and they had it stipulated in the contracts how many seconds they had to be up there and what they had to do, and it just kind of cheapened the whole experience. It's one thing to be a waste of taxpayer dollars to do that kind of thing, because that would be done, I think, out of the goodness of their hearts. If we weren't paying for it. And, like I said, it just cheapens the whole experience.
A little disappointing, I think. You said Arizona Republic noted your request for information regarding these contracts was being slow-footed and then some.
It is. That's not something that the Pentagon is particularly proud of now. But we'll get to the bottom of it, and they've already moved to cancel some of these contracts. And the broader question is, what do we do to make sure that our services have the recruitment tools that they need? And it was thought for a while, well, advertise at NASCAR, and there was a lot of money going into that venue. And then somebody started to question, well, let's see some metrics as to what you're actually getting out of that. And it wasn't too compelling. And so we're looking at this pretty closely.
Okay. I can't let you go without your thoughts on the Republican presidential race, the presidential race on the Republican side, I should say, and your thoughts on the man of the hour. He's not going away, this Donald Trump.
Well, it's nice to be one senator who isn't running for president. So that gives me a unique perspective, perhaps. No, I find it fun to watch. I think ultimately we'll have a candidate that we can support and be proud of. My feelings about Mr. Trump and his candidacy are probably well known. I've not been a fan, and I saw that he just introduced his immigration plan, such as it is. It's not a serious plan, and I don't think it's a very serious candidacy, frankly.
Well, and I was going to ask you that one question. Is he a serious candidate? Is he a serious person?
Well, he may treat his candidacy now as serious, but if he is, in the long term, he's going to need some serious policy positions, and he's not put those forward yet. Some of the rhetoric that he's used and the statements he's made, I think make it very difficult for the Republican Party to broaden its appeal and to be able to win national elections. So that's my biggest problem with Mr. Trump.
But as obviously a strong Republican, I mean,
Right.
I don't think anyone thinks you're drifting over to the Democrats anytime soon. And yet he calls John McCain not his kind of hero. What do you think when you hear anyone, much less the front-running Republican for president, say such a thing?
That's the most ridiculous statement I'd ever heard. Anybody who challenges John McCain's war record or his heroism, if they do that, they don't know John McCain's history.
And the idea that illegals are bringing drugs, bringing crime, quote, they're rapists.
Yeah, that was not a statement that one who wants to broaden appeal makes. And it's just like the statement that I'm going to build a wall and force the Mexican government to pay for it. It's just these statements range from offensive to simply laughable.
So with that in mind, what does his success, and we'll keep it to Arizona, he's #1 in Arizona right now. What does his success say about Republican voters in Arizona?
I think that it says more about the timing right now. The election isn't until next year. And now is a time where I think people can express their displeasure at Washington, which they're doing, and they're justified in doing so, and maybe expressing their displeasure with the status quo. But as we get into next year and we look seriously about someone who can lead this country and lead the most powerful country in the world, then I think we tend to look a little more carefully, and that will come.
Okay, last question then. With that in mind, you saw the debates, both of them.
Right.
Any bells rung there? any surprising disappointments?
No, I thought people who hadn't seen some of these candidates before, John Kasich, for example, I'd known him. I didn't serve at the same time he did in the House, but I followed after him, and I'd always admired his work on the Budget Committee and his acumen on fiscal issues. And I think you know, a lot of Republicans were exposed to that for the first time. You know, and Carly Fiorina as well. Her grasp of some foreign policy issues, I think, surprised some people, and and I think Governor Bush did a good job as well, and as did Marco Rubio and several others. So, but it's a long way to go.
All right. Well, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
And Tuesday on Arizona Horizon, we'll talk more about the big jump in Phoenix area home building permits, and we'll hear about an effort to improve the state bar. It's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.